All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. I'm Shep, and I guess it's suspension month here at the shop because I've got another suspension video for you. Not really sure how this happened, but it seems like things just come in patterns here, and we wind up doing, I don't know, the same thing a whole bunch of times in a row. So we got something still suspension related, but a little bit different I want to show you today. So what we've got here is the before and after, and the reason I'm able to show you these at the same time is because we're doing this install a little bit different, and that's kind of why I wanted to show it to you. So typically when you are upgrading the front end on, in this case, a Dyna, but really any bike, whether it's a Dyna, Sportster, Softail, Bag, or whatever, you wind up reusing, disassembling your front end and, you know, either changing the lowers or changing the tubes or changing the cartridges. In some cases, you wind up changing all of those things. And that is what this customer here elected to do. So rather than go through the effort of disassembling and cleaning these fork legs, we just used new components because he had a set of powder-coated lowers, he had a set of black tubes, and you can't quite see it here at the top, but there's a set of Legend cartridges in there too. He had all those things, and so all we had to do was source a couple of extra little assembly parts, and we were able to completely assemble a new set of fork legs without disassembling the old ones. Now, obviously, you're spending a little more money to do it that way on parts, but you're certainly saving some time in terms of labor and cleanup. And the best part, I suppose, is that if you had another project or somebody who wanted your other ones, I mean, these have chrome lowers, there's some desirability for that, I suppose. You've got still a fully assembled set of fork legs that you could use for something else or, you know, sell on down the road at the swap meet or whatever. So that's what we did here. So I'm doing the intro here at the end of the install. So what I'm gonna do now is we'll rewind back in time and I'll show you this from the very beginning where we lay out all the parts that we need to do this assembly of new tubes, new lowers. We obviously got new dust shields here as well. And then all the other parts that go along with that. And then of course the cartridges that go inside. So if you're interested in seeing how Dyna, or really this would apply to any fork legs, but in this case it's a Dyna, but if you're interested in seeing how they come together, well then stick around because we've got the full assembly for you coming up right now. All right, so since we're gonna be assembling these forks essentially from scratch, or at least not reusing any of the parts that came off the bike, I think the first thing I should probably do is kind of go through what we have here, what the customer bought, some of the little parts we had to add on in order to make a complete fork leg assembly, as opposed to just sort of the main basic parts you might obviously know you need. So, kind of starting on that in that order, first thing we've got, maybe the most obvious, is a new set of lowers. So in the case of this bike, they had chrome lowers on it. The customer found a used set of, well, I guess they weren't chrome, they were just the regular sort of raw ones, and he had them powder coated in black. So we've got these. We've got a new set of fork tubes, and these are from Pro 1. And well, we'll get to opening these up, I guess. I gotta tear all this open, but that's what's in here are the black fork tubes. We've got a set of cartridges from Legend, and I am actually gonna open this box because it does come with a few of the small items that you're gonna need. So I figure I might as well show that to you now. So what we've got in here is, obviously we've got our two cartridges. We've also got some additional items in here. So one is we've got a set of top out springs, and since Legend cartridges use different top out springs than OE, they include them. That works in our favor here. Otherwise we'd have to go find a set of OE ones. In this case, there is a bottle of fluid in here too. Legend, some of their kits come with this. I don't know if any of them still do. I think this is an older one that the customer had, so it's got the fluid included. Just double check that. If it doesn't come with fluid, you'll need it, obviously. Then another important piece is the oil cup. So the Legend kits come with one of these, and the reason for that is some bikes only have one in them, and you need two of them to use these cartridges. So in most cases, you'll have two, but they give you this spare one in the event that you have one of the cartridge forks that comes from the factory that doesn't have one of these. You'll need this. So in our case, we're gonna use this one because we don't have any original parts. And then we just picked up a second one. So now we've got a complete set of two. So that is kind of the big items. Let's talk about some of the little small stuff that you might be reusing or that you're just gonna need anyway. So one obviously is, these are the dust covers, sort of the, what do you call them? I don't know, the cosmetic dust covers that go over the dust seals. These are from Harley. You could have taken your original ones. In this case, the customer didn't have these. Could have got them powder coated, but these are just Harley P&A black dust covers. And we obviously are gonna need a set of bushings for those new fork legs. So we've got 2 different sizes. Each leg will use 1 of each. And we've got a new set of bolts that go in to screw the cartridge into the bottom of the leg. So these are the bolts themselves and come with a set of washers as well. And then finally, seal kit, which you'd need this anyway if you were disassembling and reassembling, but in our case, obviously we need all these parts because we've got nothing original. So that, I'm pretty sure, is all the parts. So basically you can go from nothing and assemble a complete fork leg without needing any of the original takeoff parts. If you're doing this from scratch, you don't have something and you're just trying to put a bike together, or I don't know, if you don't want to go through the disassembly process and you can just leave your fork legs as they are, which is what we did here because we didn't really need any of those parts. Seemed like it was easier to just buy a couple little things here rather than disassemble those legs that are otherwise complete and can be used for something else. So hopefully that kind of explains it. So from here, I think what we're gonna do is just kind of dive in and start doing the assembly. So the first thing I'm gonna do, well, the first thing I've already done is clean these. So anytime you get a part back from powder coating, you wanna make sure that you got all the sand from the sandblasting, any kind of dirt or grit or anything like that out of any threaded holes, certainly any internal parts, just make sure they're all clean. So we cleaned all this through. Now what we're gonna start to do, now that these are clean, is we're gonna start to do the assembly of the sliders to the lowers. So I'm gonna clear this stuff off the workbench and we'll get started with putting those pieces together. And then once we have our sort of outer assemblies created, we'll then get the cartridges installed and these will be more or less ready to go on the bike. It's gonna be a pretty quick video without any of the removal or installation on the bike. This actually goes really fast and it's not that difficult to do. So stick around and we'll get started on this. All right, so we've got all of our parts laid out here. I zoomed in a little bit so it'll be a little bit easier to see what I'm doing to get these legs ready. And actually had made one discovery that I was not aware of, which is that I'd forgotten that the Pro 1 tubes actually come with one of the needed bushings pre-installed. So some of the tube manufacturers do this. Pro 1 is one of them. The last ones we did were Arlen Ness tubes. They didn't have the bushings pre-installed, so no big deal. Actually saves us a little bit. We can put one set of bushings back on the shelf. Now, we have a couple of options. If you watched the video we did 2 videos ago where we were doing a very similar setup, same 49mm deal except for a bagger instead of a Dyna, I started and installed everything from the bottom and then put this bushing on last. So in this case, we've got 2 choices. We can either take this bushing off and do it the same way that I did it before, or because the bushing is already on, we can leave it in place and put everything on from the top. Now, it probably is literally 6 one, half dozen the other to do it one way or the other. I'm just gonna do it the opposite way that we did it the last time, just to kind of show you both ways. So if you're interested in seeing this go on from the bottom instead of the top, go 2 videos back and you'll see me do that. In this case, I'm gonna slide everything on from the top. One of the reasons why, and I'll just go through this again, you wouldn't, in many cases, put the seal on from the top is that on a used fork tube, you're gonna have a lot of road wear on the front part, the exposed part of your fork leg. And that would essentially be the part that is not going up and down inside of the fork lower and going through that seal. It's probably further up where you're just getting sort of road debris, things aren't being wiped off, rock chips, things like that. Little imperfections that maybe you can see and maybe you can't see, but that could certainly damage the seal as it goes over. So we're gonna show you how you protect the seal as it goes on, but if you can avoid that altogether by doing it from the bottom, sometimes that's the better option. In a case like this, where the tube is brand new and there are no imperfections in it, we're still gonna use the plastic protectant to make sure we don't damage that seal, but truthfully, you probably don't even need it on a brand new tube like this, although we always do it just to be rather safe than sorry. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna get this set up. We'll put both of these down here and we'll start to assemble all the seals and components and show you how that all goes on. So the order of things is gonna be at the very bottom, you've got that bushing that's already installed in the groove of the fork. The next piece to go on is gonna be the next bushing, followed by the protector ring that will protect the seal from the bushing. Then you'll have your oil seal. Then on top of that, you'll have your retaining ring. And then on top of that, you'll have your dust wiper protector. And then on top of that will be the cosmetic dust cover. So all these pieces are gonna go on in this order, not all at this exact moment, but that's the order they're all gonna go on. So we're gonna start out with the bushings, and what I'm gonna do is just put a little bit, I've got some of the suspension fluid that came in this kit, and I just poured a little bit into the cap. I'm just gonna lubricate this bushings a little bit as I slide them on. So there's one for one side. And there's the other side. Next, we're gonna put our protector spacer rings in. Just like any stamped washer, it's gonna have a sharp side and a sort of beveled side. We're gonna put the sharp side down towards the bushing. And obviously, you wanna be really careful putting all this stuff on that you don't scratch these fork legs. This is metal and all that going on there, so just be careful as it all slides down. So the next thing is gonna be the seals. So before I do that, I'm just gonna pick these up and just nicely drop these parts all the way to the end here. Okay. Very good. All right, and now we've got our seals to go on. Now, the James seal kit that we use comes with a little packet of dielectric grease, which is a very good lubricant to use for installing your seals and pre-lubricating them so that they don't get damaged and they don't leak. We've got something else that we use just because it's what we've always used and it works really well. It's called Slick Honey. It's actually a bicycle product that we were turned on to. But in any event, it works very, very well, but dielectric grease would probably do you just fine if you didn't have any of this. So I'm gonna get the inside sealing area of this. I'm gonna put some on the outside of it as well. I'm just gonna wait till they're on to do that. It's just a little bit less messy that way. So grab that one here. Okay. All right. So now these both need to go on. Now these obviously do have a direction. The side of it that has the name part numbers on it is gonna go up, and the side that has the visible little spring retainer in it is gonna go down. So what we're gonna do here is take a little bit of, this is just a cut up plastic bag, and I'm going to wrap the tube in it. This is easier if you use the corner of the bag, but I didn't have a corner piece available, so we're just using a little straight section. And now, I'm just gonna put the seal on around the bag. And then the idea here is to use the bag as kind of a sled to bring the seal down. Now, if the seal comes off of this, it's no big deal, because like I said, the tube is clean and it doesn't have any wear on it. But if you were doing this on a used tube, you would just want to make sure you definitely got the seal past that area of the fork leg that might have like road chips in it. And once you get into the working area where the seal is normally going up and down, you're free to take it out, because obviously the seal is going to wipe across those places 10,000 times once you put it on the bike. So that's how that goes. All right, so that's one done. And I'm gonna do the other side now. Fresh little piece of plastic bag here. Take our seal, make sure it's facing the right way. Okay. That one got a little away from me there. Okay. All right. So now we're going to pull the plastic down. And now we can pull the seal off the plastic and remove it. So obviously we've got lubricant grease all over this. No big deal. We'll just wipe it off. All right, so with our bushings, ring, and seals all installed, we've got one more step before we go ahead and get our sliders put into the lowers. And that is going to be to make sure that we put the oil cups in the bottoms of each of the fork legs here. So we've got one for that side, we've got one for this side. So before we move along and put those in, I'm gonna add a little bit of grease, lubricant, what have you, like I said I was going to, onto the outsides of our seals. And we are now ready to get these put into the legs. So we'll just slide these in like this. And I'm gonna just hold these upside down for the moment just to make sure that that oil cup stays exactly where we meant it to stay, which is sitting in the bottom of the leg there. So do the same on each side and slide these down. Now, this one I just flipped back over. I'm gonna keep working with it. That's why I flipped the other one. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna use our seal driver to go ahead and knock these seals in. But before I do that, I'm gonna just knock the bushing down in first. These are new bushings, new tubes, you know, everything's new. I just wanna make sure that that bushing gets fully seated in there. So the way we're gonna do that is by using the seal driver, just to give a little bit of a tap onto the bushing, just to get that all the way down first. So once we've got that in place, go ahead and do the same thing with our seals and get those seated. All right, so hopefully you could hear the change in tone on the driver as that seal worked itself all the way down. So as long as we're here, I'm just gonna go ahead and put the retaining clip on as well. Oop, don't drop it. So that'll slide in. Just use a screwdriver or a pick or something just to get this seated down. Obviously you don't want to be scratching anything, so just be careful. And that clip all the way in, we know our seal is all the way in, and this side is good to go. So we're gonna do the same thing now on the other side. I'm gonna do that same procedure, just give a little bit of just a pre-tap onto that protector ring. Probably don't even need the full seal driver to do it. I think we do. Thought maybe I could just do it with half of it. So little force is required to do that. There we go. Got that in. Pull that apart. Okay. And put our tool back together here. And we'll send the seal home now. Okay. Retainer clip. Just work that in. Clip, clip, one more, clip. All right. Next up is going to be our dust seals. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide those down. And these, you're not going to be able to use the tool necessarily to drive these on the way we did with the pieces beforehand, but you should be able to do it by hand. If you can't get it fully seated by hand, you can always use something like a little plastic tool like this. Just push around the edges, a piece of wood can work. You just don't want to use like a screwdriver or something because you can tear it. Okay, do the other side. Okay. So our last piece to go on is going to be our cosmetic dust caps here. These are probably going to require a little bit of force to get them on just because you've got fresh powder coat here on the lower and also powder coat on these from the factory. These are Harley P&A parts. They look a little sloppy in the powder coating. That's just how they came from Harley. It wasn't something the customer had done. But in any event, what I'm going to do here is just give these tubes just a quick little wipe down first, and then I'm going to slide those dust caps on. All right, and so what we're seeing on the tube here, this sort of rainbow kind of deal, that's just going to be from the lubricant that we were using to get the seal in there. So you'll see that kind of wipe on there on the fork legs, and it's just going to be some residue from the seal. It's not a big deal. It'll stop eventually, and you can wipe it away. Okay. All right, go ahead and get these put on. Okay, and the way we're gonna do this is I'm gonna take the seal driver, and instead of using it the forward direction, I'm gonna use the top of it, put it on backwards. I'm gonna use this to drive our seal or our dust cap into place. All right, so there's one done. And we're gonna jump across to the other one here. And I'm gonna do the same thing. All right. So probably a good idea to take the other one off the workbench as you do that. You see one almost fell there, but I managed to catch it, so all good. All right. So at this point, we are ready to start installing the cartridges at long last. So I'm gonna get cleaned up here a little bit and get some of the stuff we don't need anymore out of the way. We'll get our cartridges back up here and we'll get this installation finished off. We're definitely in the home stretch now. All right, let's get started with getting these cartridges put in. So this is a pretty straightforward process with the Legend cartridges. The first thing we're gonna do is take the included top out springs and put one into each fork leg. And I'm gonna look down inside both to make sure the spring is sitting down there straight, and also to make sure that our oil cups are still sitting in the bottoms aligned the way they should be, and they are. Next thing we need to do is talk about the cartridge themselves. These are minimally adjustable, so no compression or rebound or anything like that. There's an internal preload adjustment here where this collar is gonna come set at 0 turns, and you can tell it's at 0 because there's no tension on the spring. This is adjustable in full turns. There's a flat on the rod in here that this has to be set down onto. So you can't do like a quarter a turn or a half a turn. It has to be complete revolutions. So basically, if you're anything under 250 pounds for the rider, you're gonna be at 0. There's some increments above that, but for the case for our rider, he's under 250, so we're gonna leave these at 0 where they are. So we're gonna take each of these, just do a quick inspection, make sure they look solid and together and clean, and they are. So we're gonna take one leg, and they're the same in this case in terms of which goes right and left. It's not like Oleans where you have a right and a left side. These are gonna go either way. So we're gonna put one of these into each of our fork legs. All right, so there's one, and here's the other. All right, so our next step from here is we need to get these bolted down into basically we're gonna sandwich the lower between the bolt and the threads in the bottom of the cartridge. So We've got new bolts and washers here. I'm gonna put a little bit of Loctite on each one of these. Okay, and I've said this before, it is vastly easier to do this with an impact than it is to do it by hand, because the cartridge can just sort of free spin. Having the impact will allow the bolt to spin in and grab, and then you'll be able to tighten it. So you'll have a much harder time of it trying to do it by hand. So I'm gonna turn the gun down to the 2 setting, which is usually pretty good for getting these bolts seated. So I'm gonna do this, put this in, get it started. There's 1. And 2. All right. So now we've got our cartridges installed. Our last step is to get the oil put in. Now, most of the other suspension front ends we do the oil by a measurement. For Legend, they give you a volume measurement. So you're gonna look at your chart here. So for our part number, which is the 0512 for an 06 Plus Dyna, standard length, it's gonna take 12.5 ounces of fluid on each side. So we've got our trusty ratio right here. So I'm gonna add 12.5 ounces. Okay. And we're gonna start to pour this in. Now, this is a little bit of a pain to do with these cartridges because obviously you can't sort of pour right from the top. You sort of have to get it in this little gap here. I did a video a while back on doing these cartridges on a 41mm front end. It is vastly more of a pain to do it on those because the cartridge is so much tighter inside the tube. Here, you've got a good, almost maybe, half an inch or so. You can sort of like push the cartridge to one side. So you can start to pour the oil in. And what you're gonna have to do is kind of bleed as you go. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna start to pour some oil in here. And at some point, probably pretty soon, I'm gonna start to see it up at the top of the tube. I don't see it yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Looks like it's doing a pretty good job of just bleeding itself. Oop, there we go. Okay, so obviously I've got more fluid to go in, but there's no more room at the moment. So what I'm gonna do is move the tube up and down, and that is going to force oil into the cartridge and push the air out. And you'll hear it bubble as you do it, and you can continue to add fluid. Obviously, you wanna make sure you don't spill any because it will throw your measurement off. You've got exactly the amount you need, theoretically, in your measuring cup, so you just wanna go nice and slow and not spill any. Okay, so I've got all the fluid in, and I'm gonna just continue to bleed this until I stop hearing any kind of bubbling, and I'll probably continue to go a little bit beyond that, just to be sure. So I'm gonna count off and just do kind of 10 times to start out with and see where we're at. All right, So we're good there. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other one. I'm just gonna pause the camera. I'm sure you don't need to watch me do that exact same thing twice. And we'll pick back up with getting these closed up, and we'll be all set. With both our legs filled with the proper amount of oil and bled out, last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna raise the tubes up to meet the caps, and we're gonna thread them on. But I'm gonna add one step in here that is not included in Legends instructions, but it's just a good best practice, which is we're gonna take a little bit of grease, and we are going to lubricate both the O-ring that's pre-installed on here, and we're also gonna get some on the threads of the cap as well. Just wanna make sure this all goes on nice and smooth and seals really well. All right, so with that done, let's bring this back out. Okay, gonna bring our cartridge up and get it started on the cap. Okay, and I'm just gonna do this by hand until it gets tight. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna jump over to the vise here that'll hold this. And truthfully, you could probably do this by hand and just turn it, but we have the vise, so I use it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be in the shot anymore. Let me, you know what, I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll get in the same place, then we'll bring them both to the vise really quickly, and we'll get these tightened down. All right, so I'm just going to wrap our tube, the microfiber, and then also our vise here is not just your average vise. You don't want to stick your fork leg in just a regular bench vise. We've got some aluminum soft jaws in here that have a cutout for fork leg, so they just hold them nice and tight. This is not necessary, like I said, on these. On some of the ones that require adjustment and things like that, this can be helpful, but in this case, all we're doing is using it to just hold the tube while we tighten down the cap. Okay, and this does not need to be super tight. Just snug it down. There's probably a torque spec in there, but truthfully, just snug, tight, that'll do it. All right, so that is gonna complete that one. And well, we're gonna do the same to the other one, but I guess I can show you them both when they're done, but I think that looks pretty awesome. We obviously got fingerprints and oil all over this again, so we're gonna wipe it down, but let me get this other one tightened down, and then we'll get them both cleaned up, and we'll just take a look at the final product. All right, well, there you have it, all cleaned up and wiped down and ready to go. We got the final product of our made from scratch fork legs, if you will. So obviously not made from scratch, but what I mean is without reusing any of the parts on the bike, we still have our original fork legs, like I showed you in the beginning of the video. This is all just parts we were able to source and put together a whole new set to go on this bike. Now, we're gonna end the video here. I'm not gonna show you installing these onto the bike. Number one, because putting fork legs on a Dyna is super easy, but number two, because we're not even ready to do it. I've got other work that needs to be done on that bike to get it ready for these. I really just wanted to show you the installation process and show you how to do it, sourcing all the different parts you would need if you were trying to do this from scratch. So that's it, and well, I guess hopefully you found this one interesting if you made it this far into the video, and we'll see you next time.